Committee to order. Just a reminder, this meeting is being taped by ActonTV. Good evening, everyone. This is the last school committee meeting of the year, and it is also my last school committee as your chair. So I wanted to take a minute and thank everyone for the hard work that they have done over the course of the year. This has been a productive year, and we should be proud of the work that we do. It's sometimes hard to tell and hard to remember that we're volunteers doing this. We are starting a new cycle in July, beginning with the July workshop. Lastly, I just want to thank you for allowing me the privilege to serve you as chair, and I look forward to joining you on that side of the table. Okay, we've reached the time in our meeting where I will call for public participation. If there's anyone here who has come to speak to us on items that are not on our agenda, now is the time to come up and take your place at the podium. Okay, seeing no one. Do we have a student representative here? No? It is finals week. I was actually going to register my gratitude and shock a bit because it is finals week over at the high school. So. Okay, so moving right along to the superintendent's update.
All right, thank you. Leave the gavel with you. I just want to take an opportunity and congratulate all 490 of our recent graduates from the class of 2019, and also thank the high school administration and leadership team just for a wonderful commencement ceremony that they put on last week. Many of our faculty and staff have spoken about the tremendous leadership that members of the class demonstrated throughout the year and their 4 years at the high school, and in particular about the positive tone that our seniors this past year set for the school. So congratulations to them for that. I also just always put in everyone's mind that, you know, graduation isn't just a high school exercise. It's actually the culmination of 13 years of work by our students toward that goal. So I just want to make sure I thank all of our families, our community, and all of our faculty and staff across the district for their support of our graduates over the years. The second one, I wanted to follow up with you briefly because this is our last meeting of the year, around the high school incident from May of this past year. If you recall, in late May, we had an incident at the high school where there was some graffiti found in a restroom that made threats against some students who were Indian. And we have investigated it, and we were able to determine who caused that. You know, it turns out that the student was also of Indian descent, and while we're not going to share a lot of information more specific to it, we were able, through the investigation, to determine that it was not written with the intent of targeting the Indian population in our community. It was also not written to be a credible threat against students. Again, all of these situations are complex and we can't always share a lot of information about that, but I wanted to at least come back with that. Simultaneous to that though, even though the intent may not have been to do that type of harm, I want to really make sure that we understand that the impact did some serious harm to some of the sense of safety of some of our students and some other members in our community. So with that, I want to just reiterate that we remain committed to expanding our work around diversity, equity, and inclusivity within our schools. We're partnering with the Anti-Defamation League next year to bring in its A World of Difference program to the high school next fall. And just as a reminder, that is a peer-led program that aims to reduce incidents of bias and hate in the schools. We're going to be talking about this a little bit later, but because I think it's important for our community to know, in our continuation of our efforts to increase our work around diversity, equity, and inclusivity over the next few years, as of July 1st, Dr. Don Bentley's title is going to shift from Assistant Superintendent of Student Services to Assistant Superintendent of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity. The focus of her work in the new role will be to lead our efforts around DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusivity, and also around social emotional learning. Since she began at AB, this has been a lot of the focus of her work, so it's not necessarily a shift in that. But while working toward creating more inclusive environments in the school, she's been balancing the work that she's already responsible for and overseeing special education. That leads to some challenges in making sure that we can prioritize this work around DEI and social emotional learning. So as we welcome our interim director of special education, we want to take advantage of that opportunity to allow Dr. Bentley to focus more on leadership within that specific, incredibly important aspect of the work. And then finally, I just wanted to send a thanks to both communities, to you, to our faculty, staff, and students across the district for a fantastic first year here at AB. It's been a tremendous opportunity for me coming into the district. This is, I think what strikes me the most, and I had an opportunity to talk to Matt Malio earlier today, and he asked the question, what do you recall about your first year or something like that? And what I remember saying is what tremendous people we have in this community. From our students to our families, to our faculty and staff, and to just people throughout both communities, really passionate about education, doing the right thing for kids, and it's been an absolute honor to serve as the superintendent this year, so thank you to everyone. And that's it for me, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Okay. This is a year where we have enjoyed many presentations from the school community, and tonight is no exception. We have invited Leo Molnar here. He is the director of the visual arts. It's more than that, right? Right?
Yeah.
What is his?
That's it.
Yeah, okay. Yep. So we welcome him to the podium.
Okay, thanks. Okay, good evening. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. So we have a lot going on in the Visual Arts Department, and but only a brief amount of time tonight. So I'm not going to talk to you about all the kind of murals we have and shows going on, but I'm going to focus on one piece of what we're working on, which is a major reform to our elementary school curriculum that we've begun to work on and to try out. So to start, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the philosophy that guides the change that we are examining and initiating here in Acton-Boxborough. So I want to start with, this is a quote that I find a lot of meaning in as an educator. It's by Gordon Brown, who was Dean of Engineering at MIT many years ago. And he said that to be a teacher is to be a prophet. We are not preparing students for the world of today or the world that teachers have grown up in. We are preparing students for a world that we can barely imagine. And this is, I think, really important because when you think about what we know, we don't know, obviously as it says, we don't know a lot about the future, what it's going to be like, but we do know at this point that it is going to be, the only certainty is going to be tremendous and constant change. We know that a lot of jobs that are good, solid jobs today will be replaced by artificial intelligence or more automation. We know that there will be a lot of disruption in our climate and a lot of change in our society. And so we are thinking about what do we know that students need, right? And what we do kind of know that they need, we don't know which skills they need. We know they need skills, but which set of skills is something that often really is up to individual students to figure out what they need, right? And we know they need certain facts, information, but which ones exactly, again, we don't know. But we do know that creativity, an ability to adapt and change, an ability to persevere through difficulties, these are all things that are going to be essential, and the ability to collaborate. So this is central to the work we do in the art department. We focus our work around what we call the studio habits of mind. So here they are, there's 8 of them. Developing craft. Develop craft is one, of course, which happens a lot, so you still need skills, of course, and we do teach those in the arts. The ability to engage and persist, to keep going when things are difficult, to find meaning in things that you may not at first, and keep working on them. Observation, the ability to look at the world closely. Again, important whether you're an artist or a scientist or a writer, right? The ability to reflect on your work and improve and change and keep growing. The ability to express, both in terms of your ideas, but also visually and verbally. The ability to stretch and explore, to go beyond your comfort zone and try out new things. To envision new ideas and new possibilities for your own creativity and for the world. And finally, collaboration and community, learning to work with others, both as a student and also as a community member, locally and globally. These are, of course, when you hear about 21st century skills, usually people don't get very specific about what those mean, but when you do actually read about it and think about it, this is sort of universally what is talked about as 21st century skills. So it's a lot of the things that are taught through the arts, but then of course bleed over into almost every other discipline or line of work. So I also want to talk to you about one more thing that's sort of central to our idea of teaching, and a way we think about different kinds of teaching. So this is a theory of everything pedagogical. It was put together by a guy named John Crow, who is a professor of art at Mass Art. And he kind of divided up teaching into these three distinct kind of modes of instruction. So the most basic one, which you can see on the left there, is I do it, you do it. So in art, that might be, for example, I'll just take my own teaching. I'm going to teach you how to paint with acrylic paint, and we're going to do a color study where you try out these different colors, and you're going to learn how to layer paint. I'm going to give you very specific instructions about all the different ways you layer paint and the different mediums you put in. And everybody's going to do the same series of test strips or something, So they're learning a very specific skill for which I do it, you do it is appropriate, right? The next level up of complexity gets to I challenge and you wrestle. So you can see a slightly different, a broader presentation by the teacher. The idea here is the teacher's setting the parameters, and they may be a somewhat narrow set of parameters, but within that there's freedom, some freedom for the student to pick and choose what they do. So for example, in the arts, it could be, I might say to students, you're going to do a painting, you're going to use acrylic paint, but what you paint is up to you. So there, the material is set, but the content is up to them. You could flip that around. You could say, you're going to do a project about social justice, but you pick whether you're going to paint or do photography or do digital art or what have you, do a stop motion film, right? There's a lot of ways to do that. So that would still be in the realm of I challenge and you wrestle. There's parameters. Generally, you see a lot of both of those first two in K-12 education. What we see less of, and we're trying to figure out how to get more of as well in our educational system and in the visual arts, is this last one. You choose, I support. So whereas the teacher is in a coaching position, much more a supporting position, and the student has much more agency over what their mode of expression is, what medium they're using or skill they're using, and what they're thinking about and creating, responding to. So obviously in art, that could be as simple as you pick out which material. We have these materials and methods available in the classroom. You pick out your theme, your subject area. Maybe you pick out who you're working with. Are you doing it alone? Are you collaborating? And then I'm going to support you. I'm going to help you reach your goal. Okay? So that's sort of something to just keep in mind as I show you the next few slides. So before I talk about art change, I want to show you kind of the traditional visual arts curriculum. This is something you will see still the vast majority of schools in the United States and locally. And I want to show you some examples so you can get a sense of where we're going with this. So this is a oil pastel drawing that my son did. He's at a public school in another town. And when I saw this, I was really impressed. It was a really cute fox that he drew, right? And I can see it looks like he really observed carefully and expressed himself a lot, right? However, this was at an art show. They had all the work from, every kid in the school had work on display, K through 6. K through 5. When you look, I realized that in fact, every student in the class did the exact same fox, right? And then I walked around the whole building. They're all very cute, right? But there's, very little, there's a few different variations. Some did night, some did day, sort of. Some did snow, some did grass. There's tiny bits of choices, but by and large, they're all drawing the same fox. Why are they drawing a fox? I have no idea, but they're all drawing foxes. And I walked around the building and photographed things, and so there was different classes all doing the same exact thing. So we had classes where everybody was Mondrian for the day, and there were classes where everybody did sunflowers, and everybody did a sort of a hexagon design, and then there were classes where everybody did fish. So again, this is what we would call, if going back to that Crow's theory of everything, almost everything on display that day was, I do it, you do it, right? And this is, there was a few things that were I challenge, you wrestle slightly, but there was certainly none of this latter one. And so this is, what this sort of system is if I go here, there's sort of a summary of it. basically in this traditional system of visual arts education, the student is not the artist. The teacher is the artist. The teacher is deciding what they're doing and how they're doing it, right? You're all going to paint foxes, you're all going to draw foxes, and you're all going to use oil pastels. And here's your color choices. So the teacher is the artist. The classroom is the teacher's studio. The teacher is choosing what materials are being used, and the students are artist assistants sort of making multiples of the teacher's vision. So the visioning, if you think about the studio habits of mind, oh, sorry, I don't have it. But if you go back to, if just thinking about the studio habits of mind I put up earlier, the kids here are they're observing, they are developing craft, they're learning discrete, concrete skills, but they're not learning to envision, they're not learning to express, they're not learning to stretch. So they might be stretching, exploring, trying some new things. May not be connecting with the community. It's possible they could do a community project together, but it's quite limited in terms of what they're learning through that system. So what we're switching to in sort of gradually and experimenting with in our elementary schools is something called TAB, Teaching for Artistic Behaviors. The idea here, this was developed by Diane Jackwith and Kathy Douglas. These are both art teachers, taught elementary education in Massachusetts and then went to and worked at MassArt. The focus here is that one, the child, this is what we kind of think about. The child is the artist, not the teacher. The classroom is the child's studio, and the teacher is there to support and coach the child so that they can reach their vision of, that they're, to reach their goal that they've set for themselves. So now the structure of this can be quite different. So when the teacher comes in, again, there's a lot of ways to do this. There's probably, for every teacher has their own way of doing this. It's not going to look the same in every classroom. But generally speaking, the way it works is the teacher starts out with a demonstration of a skill, of a method. They might introduce the class to something from art history, and they might talk to them about a habit of mind, like how do you reflect? How do you stretch and explore, and talk to the students about, and get the students to talk about how they do these different things. But then there's student choice, and this classroom is set up in centers. So you'll have, for instance, one classroom might have a drawing center where there's drawing materials. They'll have a sculpture center, which might have cardboard and wire, or sheet metal, depending on the class, the age of the students, and what they can work with safely. There could be a stop motion center where you're learning how to using iPads to make stop motion movies. A printmaking center with any different kind of printmaking. There could be a painting center, a watercolor center, as many centers as you can imagine there could be in the classroom. And the students will have choice about which center they go to and what they do at that center. In some cases it's just the materials available and the students can know where to get them. In some cases it's actually a different physical space in the room. So that's sort of, and then the students may choose to do what the demonstration was. They may decide, yeah, I saw that demonstration of how to do block printing, and now I want to try it out. And then the teacher will work with them and help them. Or the student may say, you know what, no, I really want to keep working on this comic book I've been making. And they'll go do that. So there's a lot of choice, and students are empowered to make that choice and supported by the teacher. Now, there's a lot of variation in it. So there are some teachers who are doing, all choice all the time. And then the teacher might just sort of make sure that the students have experimented with enough different materials so that they get, not just totally stuck in one area. There are some teachers, however, who will do a mix. So some of their units will be what we call have-tos. So they'll be traditional units. So they might do a ceramics unit where everybody is working with clay, and then then they might do that for a month, and then they'll switch over to something which is totally choice. There are also, again, you might have a unit where, again, it's I wrestle, I challenge, you wrestle, where, you say to the students, okay, we're all doing something on identity. Or you have a choice. You can do personal identity, you can do nature. But then what you do with it, how you do it, it's up to you. So they'll do that kind of structure as well. And then you also have full choice. And you'll get the full gambit of depending on the teacher's comfort level and where the students are at. And that can vary from school to school, and I've seen all be quite successful. Now the work that comes out of this is quite different. So for instance, you'll just get a huge variety. So again, that same day I went to the art show at my son's school, there was everything the same. by grade level. I went to the art shows at Conant, and I recently had been also at the art school at Gates. Right now we have 3 schools that have fully made this transition, Douglas, Gates, and Conant. And you'll see that all the artwork is completely different. So you'll see a Batman cow. You'll see the Millennium Falcon. You'll see a bouquet of flowers made out of construction paper, a game that a bunch of students collaborated on to design, a model of a fish tank. So you see this tremendous diversity of work. Some of it, really incredibly carefully done. Some of it still a bit, rough around the edges. You'll see also, now another example I want to see is you'll see a great diversity within specific mediums. So traditionally, if you look on the left there, that's a coil pot. So this is a unit that like almost every art teacher who has a kiln, access to a kiln in America does, where the kids learn how to make, a snake out of clay, and you make a bunch of snakes, you put it together, you got a pot, right? And you'll go to any school and you'll see, 30 pots all done by the same, by that grade. But in TAB, now the teacher will demonstrate this is how you do a coil, but then leave it up to the students to say, figure out what they want to do with that coil. So, for instance, at Conant, one child decided to make a lighthouse out of coils, and another student decided to make just sort of a sculpture with balls and coils and mix it together and make something that was not functional but was beautiful to them. So they're able to take the skill, learn the skill, but then do something that was meaningful to them as an individual. You'll also see, you'll still see very traditional, observational drawing. You'll still see landscape. You'll still see a lot of the same kinds of things, but again, students have choice over what they're doing. Here you can see just a variety of examples, right? Landscape, puppets, comic books, Freddie Mercury, a collage of a shark. There's just an incredible variety. And also you'll see the students are writing much more. So we ask students often to reflect on what they've made and write artist statements. We've noticed at all of these schools, the amount of writing that students are doing about their artwork is exploded. So you'll get, instead of getting like 2 sentences about their artwork, you'll get like 2 paragraphs about what their artwork is and why it's meaningful to them. Oh, I gotta point the right direction. Okay. You'll also, this is another example of that, because of this setup and the students having choice and the students just generally being more engaged, the teacher is free to work much more closely and more substantively with individual students, because they're all going their own pace. So for instance, one teacher pointed out to me that she now has time to actually talk with every individual kindergartner about their artwork. So before, only the older kids were writing artist statements because, the younger ones couldn't write, and the teacher didn't have time to, write down their story for them. Now the teacher actually has time to sit with each kindergartner and write their story. So I just wanted to share this one with you. This is a kindergartner at Conant who said, "The story of my art is, it was nighttime and the lizards were awake. They were checking on the world and they saw stars." And that was this kindergartner's story that, he really wanted to share. That was just impossible before to capture. Another thing we've noticed is there's a tremendous explosion of collaboration. Before this, again, in traditional art projects, every kid is doing their own project, and you don't get credit, you don't get it, you got to do the project, right? Now, and I remember working in other districts where I would talk to teachers, like, well, what about a collaborative project? And they would say, well, but who gets to take it home at the end? We can't do collaborative projects. No one gets to own it, right? But now the kids are just doing it on their own. So, over there on the left, those are students at Douglas who were just a bunch of boys who decided to make a city together. And they had a lot of trials and tribulations. They had some arguments. There was some weeping. There was some things that got built and fell down and collapsed. But they learned a lot about problem solving, and they learned a lot about structure. And they did a lot of research and had a lot of great ideas. And, the end result wasn't beautiful, but what they learned is invaluable through that process. So this has been happening at all the schools, these kinds of collaboration that, again, never happened before, or rarely, or only very controlled ways by the teacher. I just want to share with you also some of the survey results. So we survey students every year about different things, and at these schools we've been surveying them specifically about this change from the traditional curriculum to the TAB curriculum. And we found, so this is 184 students, 5th and 6th graders who were surveyed at Conant and Gates. And we found that 79% of them preferred the tab structure to the years before. And again, these are classrooms where I walked in the year before, the kids were happy, they were engaged, there was no problem. You would never go into those classes and think, oh, there's some big problem here. This is something that teachers really wanted to take on and try out. But even so, we are noticing a lot more engagement. And specifically with children who were disengaged, those children are more engaged. And are also just generally, our boys are more engaged than they were before. We asked students, which system did you grow more as an artist? And again, it's about 74% thought that they were growing more under this new structure than they were previously. So this was, really encouraging for these teachers. I also want to share with you what the students are saying about it as well, specifically. There's just some quotes that I think are really beautiful about what they're experiencing. So here's a few. My favorite part of having more choice in art class is being able to switch between fields of art. If I'm having trouble in one field, then with my brain fresh, I can come back and look at things a little differently. Just like real artists, and just like a lot of real life, when you're having trouble in one area, you give it a break and work on something else. Now these children are able to do that in art class. Whereas before, it's like you finish this project, you move on to the next one, you never go back into it. Now they can go back, they can keep working on it. Okay. Having choice made me think and reflect a lot more about my artwork. I needed to plan more for things I wanted to do. Kids are also just talking a lot more. Like kids, our teachers have noticed, the kids come to school talking about, they bring their work home, they're working on it at home, and then bringing it back to school. Things, again, they just weren't doing before. Art this year has helped me grow because I've had to figure out how to solve problems on my own. I've discovered new ways to make things work, which will definitely help me through life. I think that speaks for itself. You have plenty of choices for what project you would like to complete, and you are surrounded by a friendly and encouraging community. One more point I want to make, which has been really interesting, is that in traditional art, when a kid is making, say, a fox, they look around and everybody's making the same fox, and inevitably they're comparing their fox to everybody else's. And inevitably some of the kids are like, ugh, that kid's fox is way better than mine. I can't draw. I'm not a good artist, right? I mean, you've probably heard your own children perhaps saying the same thing, right? This is happening much, much less now because everybody in the room is doing their own thing. They've chosen to do it. They've personally invested in it much more. I mean, again, not that kids were disengaged before, but they're just much more engaged, and more of them are engaged. And they're not comparing themselves to other students. And they're setting, and this is so key, right? It's intrinsic. It's not an extrinsic learning. They're setting their own standard for what they believe is excellence. And finally, this year has helped me feel more confident in my abilities, and it made me feel proud of myself. And that's just, a wonderful thing. That's what we hope every day is happening in our schools. Last thing I want to say, last quote I want to share is one of our teachers said, she'd been teaching art for 15 years. And again, a successful art teacher, and very proud of her work, loves her classroom. But after this year, she said, this is the first time in my career that my classroom actually felt like an art studio. Because it just didn't before. Again, that's especially true for elementary teachers and what they're asked to do, teaching 500 students a week. So the next thing is, what are the implications for the rest of our curriculum? Because of course, we're going to, I think, over time, this is going to produce very different students. And that's something we're, beginning to really grapple with. These are students which we hope are going to be much more able to handle freedom. They're going to be able to not just make choices, but make responsible choices, to see them through, to engage with them much more thoroughly, and to collaborate more effectively. So we're really hopeful about thinking about what are the ways we can change the rest of the curriculum to keep that going. So for instance, in the high school, of course it's different. We have a lot of electives, and students are choosing. When a student signs up for 3D graphics, they really want to know all the technical skills. So they're going to do a lot of I do it and you do it. They want to keep it very direct because they know I want to learn this skill, and that's appropriate, right, for that lower level courses in photography and animation or drawing and painting or ceramics. But What we're looking at in, for instance, high school is we're looking at every bit of our curriculum and thinking, okay, where can we add choice? Where can we open up the curriculum, within these units so that the kids have more choices along the way and not just, at the end of the unit, at the end of the semester. We're also opening up, changing our advanced level courses. So our advanced level courses used to be, for instance, again, some of them already had a lot of choice, so there isn't a big change that needs to happen. But some of them, for instance, the portfolio class that I teach now, it was very controlled, a lot of very controlled projects, because the idea was you need to produce all these very traditional works to develop a portfolio if you were going to apply to be an art major or go to art school. We've realized that, one, art schools don't want that anymore. They want to see creativity, they want to see individuality, they want to see your ability to experiment and problem solve. They don't want to see your, perfect charcoal still life. They like, that's okay, but they want to see more, what are you doing that's different and creative. And also it's what our students are really engaged with, and what we have noticed is the freedom is not leading to the work is not declining. The skill is not declining. We're still getting the same skill, but we're getting more engagement, and if anything, I'd say more complex work than we were getting before. Thank you. Any questions?
So we have time for just one or two questions or comments. John?
Thank you. I loved your slides, and your presentation was even better.
Thank you.
The introduction, when you talked about 21st century learning, although you then went into art, could have been applied to anything else. And having read back, to some of the pros' advice to an art teacher, I can change 3 words and I can apply it to any teacher. And I think the strong principle that I hope everybody took away from this presentation is the idea that the student chooses and we support, because that clearly is where we would like to go in the limit. And so my question for you is, you talked about the art curriculum. What does this mean for English or social studies or the other disciplines?
Mm-hmm. I think that is the big question, right? And my background, actually, I've spent a lot of years in social studies and humanities, and also in art, and have experienced and been experimenting with this in various ways. And I think that's something we are thinking about as a district, absolutely, kind of across the board. And we have a lot of teachers and district and leaders at the school level who are talking about it. But I don't know if Deb or Peter, if you want to talk about that.
So we're really looking forward to, in the fall, a STEAM steering committee has been working all year long to think more about STEAM learning, project-based learning, and we're excited to bring forth our framework and our vision to the school committee in the fall. We also know that the Commissioner of Education has been really talking a lot about experiential kind of learning for students and making sure that our students have those experiences K through 12. So it most definitely applies to all disciplines and all curricular areas. So yes.
Adam?
Leo, thank you for a great presentation. As someone with a fine arts degree, it's great to see how this relates to the rest of the world. My question is, this is such a great program. What are the plans to get it rolled out to the rest of the elementary school programs?
Mm-hmm. Right, so we're working, we've spent a lot of time on professional development in the past, this past year, introducing it to all the teachers. Again, this was also, I've been supporting this also, my teachers spearheaded it, and I'd seen it in other districts, and they were like, we want to do this, and I was like, great, let's do it. And then other teachers have been jumping on. So, I think, model is certainly in the arts department is, collaborative, and we want to work with the teachers and where they're at and figure out how they take ownership of it. We want the students to take ownership, but it's not going to work unless the teachers do as well. So we have teachers who are right now experimenting with it, who are trying out one unit and seeing how that goes, and then hopefully they will be gradually expanding it. We have teachers who are still in a phase where they're learning about it. And I think they're kind of all in different places, and we will, support their growth and work with them to try to, get it. The beauty of it is that it is flexible. So, we have one teacher who's really comfortable having all choice all the time. Another teacher who's really does go back and forth between the more traditional units and the choice units, and they're both really successful. I think as long as they have both, they can the kids will thrive and be ready to. But thank you.
So we've heard of Studio Habits of the Mind before. Last year, I think, Paul, did you actually read the book?
Yes.
And we were featured in the book, no?
Yeah, that's right.
Do you want to speak to that for a second?
I certainly, that's what I wanted to say, is that I had borrowed that publication from Deb earlier this year and was very excited to see some of our own teachers featured in that publication. But to me, what really spoke to me was that this is what I consider true education, is that students taking ownership of what's in front of them and creating from within, as opposed to being inured to a habit of mind of following instruction. And I very much appreciate your bringing forward or starting out with Mr. Crow's quote, because these young adults go into a society and we don't know what they're going into. And this is the way for them to be prepared for making sense of what we can't even predict for them. As opposed to, sending young adults into society with a habit of mind of being told what to do. So this is, I'm very excited, and I very much appreciate you leading this charge.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to close questioning now because we do need to move on. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
That was a thorough and very fascinating conversation and presentation.
Thank you. And I just want to say, lastly, I'm available for questions. If you want to email me or talk about this more, or me to talk about it, I'd be very happy to. And if you want to come and see these classes in action next in the fall, please let me know. We can arrange that. I'd be happy to have you. Thank you.
I was just going to say the same thing. I saw that there were definitely more questions and comments. If you want to email those to me, I will compile them and send them to Leo, just so we have a consistent communication on that. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, and I have some questions of my own that I will also email. Okay.
He is much taller. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and Superintendent Light. Our names are Amanda Bailey and Carrie Weaver. Together we chair the Acton-Boxborough Special Education Parent Advisory Council, or the ABCPAC. Under state law, the school committee establishes the CPAC to perform two functions. One, advise the district on matters pertaining to the education and safety of students with disabilities, and two, participate in the planning, development, and evaluation of the district's special education programs. We're fortunate here to have clear, active, advisory and participatory roles. We're partners with our school committee and our district, invited to provide feedback as relevant policies are drafted or reviewed, asked to participate in district-wide initiatives, and our input is given thoughtful consideration. This visual shows how families can be engaged in systems-level initiatives. It also illustrates how the CPAC functions. Much of our effort takes place at the individual level. We do this through one-to-one support, surveys, conversations at meetings, and through outreach efforts. We try to ascertain what is working and, when issues exist, determine in social thinking language the size of the problem. We then try to establish whether an issue is related to one student, a program, a school, and now and then we tug on a thread and find it goes through the whole system. We then work in a collaborative way with special education leadership to find solutions. Systems level change would be engagement in the building project process, administrative searches, and the like. We see the impact of all these efforts in policies, programs, practices, and services. People may perceive this side of the chart as expensive. It doesn't have to be. Much of the impact is usually low or no cost. The more we work to put in to solve problems collaboratively on the other end, we can stave off costs as people pay to fight themselves through the system, with a much broader effect than on that limited individual basis.
We want to ensure that our families feel supported. Parenting children with varying needs can be very isolating. We never want our Acton-Boxborough families to feel this way. We make a huge effort to support and meet them where they're at. We've attended back-to-school nights to increase visibility and reduce the stigma, connected with local support and social groups. We have a very diverse cultural background in Acton and Boxborough, and we really want to reduce the stigma around special education. Participating in the monthly joint PTO roundtable, which is hosted by the school committee. It really helps for both sides of the table to be aware of what's going on, and it's brought things to our attention about accessibility and things that we may have overlooked or they've overlooked. And we fielded dozens of parent information. If we don't know an answer, we know how to find it, or we know the resources and can guide people. We are encouraged by MassPAC to pool regional resources. So with that, we partnered with Concord Carlisle, Maynard, and Sudbury CPACs and our school districts to host basic rights and special education workshop. By doing this, we increased the attendance ultimately. It helps foster community and collaboration on all levels with our neighbors. We were invited to attend the Dyslexia and Literacy Language Connections to Reading Conference with the district team. That was brought by Dana Lab. He invited the CPAC leadership and school committee to attend with the district team. And the last one attended the Mass Department of Public Health, Department of Early Education and Care, and DESE Family Engagement Framework Coalition stakeholder feedback session. We went with Pam Smith, the Director of Special Education. Ultimately, the state wants to develop family engagement framework to be consistent across and best practices. So, on this side, the resources in education, we shared details about local trainings and events. We increased focus on sharing webinars. That was requested by the parents. There's webinars in all different languages on the Federation's website. We attended several workshops and conferences. We ended up doing a lot of personal development to help families ultimately, so we can get the information to be able to bring back to our community and share. Like I said before, we can always find the answers, and a lot of times just by networking at these conferences, we can find answers or turn people to certain people. Yes, and we are facilitating better communication ultimately overall with our Acton Boxborough families. So resource and education, special ed staff had attended one of our CPAC meetings in early spring and had requested a little, I guess, card, you'd say, to have at the table during IEP meetings. And it's just a basic card that shows all the different resources so they can point to it. Ultimately, we are gathering feedback from families on how to improve it, but overall, I mean, the feedback is good because we have the resources right in front of us at an IEP table at a team meeting. So, yes, of course. So we really enjoy partnering with the district and making sure that the families are engaged and have the resources that they need.
I have to dig through her notes to get to mine. It's okay. So I'm going to back up. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act refers to the need to educate students in the least restrictive environment, the LRE, to the maximum extent appropriate, and with supplementary aids and services, children with disabilities are to be educated with their non-disabled peers. As part of the broader district conversation, the CPAC voted this spring to recommend a move to universal and therefore district-funded all-day kindergarten. The shift to universal all-day K would make the full-day classroom the least restrictive environment, increasing opportunities for meaningful inclusion, and removing the half-day resource, half-day gen ed classroom model as a default. If a child with a disability requires a shorter day, that can be done through the IEP.
Our other accomplishments, we were solicited and provided feedback to the new superintendent for consideration as part of the entry plan findings, participated where we could in the building visioning sessions, We continue to raise awareness about access and inclusion in the community. For example, town playground designs, the schools. There's several town playgrounds that are being possibly improved, so we've been trying to be involved in that. Gardner Field is one of them. And then conducted the parent guardian survey, which Amanda's going to talk about. Not much.
The survey this year sought to follow up on issues from the 2017 survey and anecdotal reporting. We focused on general education staff understanding of special education needs, extended school year experiences, and electronic access to special education documents, among other topics. Our responses reflected 36% of students with disabilities as of the October 1 head count. The report will be shared with the district and published on our site. We hope to bring you more of the findings in the fall when we talk about our priorities for the coming year. We want to highlight one finding already shared with student services, one of those threads that goes through the whole system. Increased use of technology in the IEP development and distribution is one of our open issues. We've heralded the district's embrace of technology in communicating with families and sharing documents. We all want to eliminate the sky-high filing cabinets and the big binders. What we found when we asked parents and guardians if they have successfully accessed their child's documents in the PowerSchool portal was that 58% had not. People reported not knowing the option exists. They don't know how to access it. If they do, they have a hard time finding things in there, and sometimes things are missing. Student Services has been very responsive as issues have cropped up, like missing 504s. We are the largest district working with the cohort piloting this system. This is a sizable problem, though, particularly as IEP progress reports are distributed via this means. These reports are critical for accountability, to gauge progress and program effectiveness. When they were mailed home, they had to at least pass someone's consciousness once. Some have noted that people should be used to getting their report cards this way. Report cards aren't issued in every school, and some are paper, like at the early childhood program, so not everyone is used to accessing those. The special education documents are in a different section and kind of buried. Short of asking for all progress reports to be distributed via mail as in the past, we have made recommendations to ensure this is resolved. Let you guys go through that. We look forward to returning in the fall to share other findings with you, including things to celebrate. Most people are still happy. And opportunities to work together to improve experiences for students and families. Please save the dates for our meetings in the coming year. Join us at any time. We are excited to be screening Intelligent Lives, a film about young adults with disabilities that challenges our understanding of what it means to be intelligent. We look forward to continuing to educate the community about what inclusion is and what meaningful inclusion looks like for all kids. We celebrate the district's embrace of more inclusive teaching practices. We caution, echoing Joe Petner, that inclusion is an easy thing to do poorly. Bad inclusion for students with invisible disabilities isn't new. We all saw it as kids without seeing it for what it was. The student always working alone in the corner, the one who tipped and fell out of his chair over and over, the ones who were picked on for their perceived odd interests, the ones shamed as they struggled to read aloud, the ones with the messy paper explosion desks and holes torn through notebooks from scribbles and erase marks. As the district develops and implements large-scale inclusion and co-teaching initiatives as described in the school improvement plans, it's imperative that inclusion experts like Cheryl Jorgensen, Bill Henderson, and Howard, Tom Hare, others, the CPAC, and individual families are proactively part of the process. The home with family is the first place our children are fully included. It may be the only place. Families are a critical voice to ensure children are appropriately supported and set up for success. There are longer, richer conversations to be had we trust will benefit everyone. We welcome you to have them with us. Our thanks to outgoing Director of Special Education, Pam Smith, who was recognized at our last meeting for her collaboration with the CPAC during her tenure. Thank you also Assistant Superintendent Bentley and members of the committee. We welcome any questions.
Thank you, Amanda and Carrie. Are there any questions? Angie?
The first question is short. So in the slide, there is a 36%. Is that including the 504 kids?
No, that is only students with IEPs. We do represent families of students with 504s, and it's already been discussed how we can start to contact those families and have more interactions with them to help represent those kids too.
Okay. The next question is kind of, I'm just always, because my understanding is that we are required to meet the free appropriate public education. So how do we know, what is the evaluation process? How do we know that we have met the requirements? And is that part of the documentation? Is that?
Dawn?
Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts first.
No, go right ahead.
So that is something that free and appropriate public education is something that happens at the individual student level. And so it's the IEP team that's really charged with that for students. And parents are definitely a huge part of that, as are staff and administrators in the district. The other thing that we do regularly is go through a process of program evaluation, looking at our programs to find out, are they meeting needs? Are they including, excluding kids? How do we do this better? What are we doing well? And so those are the areas that we look at for more systemic kind of things. And I would say our collaboration with the CPAC on a regular basis is super helpful, just to look at sort of patterns that are emerging across building and districts that help us with those conversations. But I would say largely the onus and the burden falls at that IEP team to make sure that that's happening for kids.
Are there any other questions? Paul?
So it's clear to me you do a fair bit of work on behalf of the district. When I saw the slide on partnerships, I saw you're collaborating with a number of other CPACs.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, is that just for shared experience, or are you exporting your expertise, or what's happening with the partnership?
So there have been regional and statewide collaborations that have formed, because we are fortunate here, but other districts struggle to get off the ground. So as much as we can pull resources and knowledge and support people, the better. We had over 40 people at Basic Rights versus 4. And then you have parents asking questions and learning from one another, and, oh, hey, who do you see for this and that? So it's really helpful to have those ties.
Okay, we'll take one more. Adam?
Amanda, Carrie, thank you so much. My question, I think, relates a little bit to Angie's question around that 36%, where obviously we do a great job of supporting those people who know about your services, your advisory capabilities. How do we increase that outreach to all of those people who might, identified as having a special need or not? How do we make sure that everybody in the district knows the mission of your advisory council?
So a lot of it is continuing to knock down stigma, and a lot of it is more partnerships. So getting our events on the district calendar, us having more workshops and conference-like events to help bring people in and get them in on topics versus sitting in a room on our business schedule and on the record. So there are a number of things we can do, and that's something that we're looking at again for next year as we work with Debbie and then moving forward. So thank you for that, Adam.
Really quick question. You mentioned that we're the largest district piloting electronic access of documents.
The Power School Special Education cohort, we are the largest district working with that, yes? Okay, that's what we were told.
So I'm wondering, you've made some recommendations.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if those recommendations are being implemented, or where we are in the process of fixing this.
So that's the first time I've seen any of that data. It is from 36% of our families, so I'd love to find that out on a larger scale, which we can do easier than you can because our mailing list is a little bit bigger.
Yep.
But we can certainly look into it. And I still think we've been having conversations about setting up tables at some of our open houses and our back-to-school nights for families to kind of have a kiosk to come and log into too, because it's not just special education documents. There's a lot in the parent
It's
portal.
also 504s. Can you guys tell from that end how many people have logged in and who hasn't?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I have no idea.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie and Amanda. We hear from CPAC twice a year, so we'll hear they'll come back in the fall with their survey results and present to us once again. Okay, that presentation is a very nice segue to our next presentation. It's really not a presentation, but rather a report from Peter on a new appointment. appointment.
So, as we indicated to you before, and you also just heard from the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, our current Director of Special Education decided to take a position closer to her home. We found out about that in, I'm going to say mid-April, and when we started to look at the timeline for posting for a position for a Director of Special Education and the pool of qualified candidates, we found that we had two challenges. One, we were learning of the vacancy very late in the year, and two, even at the best timeline possible, the pool of qualified special education directors is extremely small. What we're seeing in surrounding communities is that position can actually take sometimes several years to actually fill after going out to multiple searches. So we did not feel comfortable trying to start a search in April to conduct a full search because if you conduct a full search and then it isn't successful, then you start to go back and look at how you could fill with an interim position. But if we tried to conduct a full search, waited 2 more months, and then decided to go with an interim position, now we would have lost out on the qualified candidates looking for interim positions as well. So based on that, we decided to move forward and hire an interim director of special education, and we ended up with 4 applicants, and I think that tells you a lot about what the candidate pool size is in general. We were hoping for a 5th applicant. It didn't materialize, but Don and I interviewed several of the candidates with the idea that if we had found multiple qualified candidates to move forward, we would have formed a committee to look at that. However, only one candidate emerged that had prior experience as a director of special education in a district similar to ours, and also who kind of met the cultural and qualifications that we felt comfortable bringing into our district. So we had one candidate that we identified that we chose to move forward. We then set up opportunities for the candidate to go to one of our CPAC meetings, meet families, meet with the CPAC group, excuse me. Oh, excuse me, it was a district forum, sorry, but CPAC was invited to it, as well as our family, sorry, the opposite. We also invited our new teen chairs that we're bringing into the elementary schools, so it was a nice opportunity for CPAC and a lot of our families to get to meet our new people coming on board, provide us some feedback. We also then had an opportunity for some of our staff to be able to meet with the person and gain an understanding. And at this point, what we're looking to do is seek your vote to appoint Debbie Dixon as the interim director of special education effective July 1st. This is for a 1-year position. If this was for a longer than 1-year position, we would have brought her in so that you would have an opportunity to ask questions. That would have been ideal anyway, but given the late time of year, she had a long-standing prior commitment for this night, and we were unable for her to be able to move that. So with that said, we've included her resume in your packet. You can see she's been a director of special education for probably about 20 years in a variety of districts similar to ours in terms of high-performing districts, but also in large districts with similar size and scope to ours. So with that said, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, we are looking for a motion on this, so I'll take questions, and then someone can make a motion. So Adam, go ahead.
Thanks for the background, Peter. I guess my question is, looking at what we have ahead of us in terms of the longer-term projects for a director of special education and understanding the background around the availability of a viable candidate pool, I would like to suggest that as we get into that period next year where we've opened that up, that we really give ourselves a drop-dead date by which we need to have a candidate pool or reconsider appointing an interim for another year, just so that any work that we're doing, particularly around longer-term projects, has some continuity and or transition time.
No, thank you. That's a great point. It's my intent that we spend the fall just continuing to study the leadership structure within the special education department. But my intent would be to post that position in December and be able to begin interviews in January and hopefully have a candidate by February.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. One, did you work with her in Franklin? I see.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yep.
And two, is she available for 2 years if we needed her to be, or is she only available for 1 year? Or do we
So,
not know?
You know, I did not inquire about a second year. In all honesty, we have to apply for a waiver just for the 1-year position with DESE. But I think probably we wanted to take it 1 year at a time. I am hopeful we're going to attract a good candidate.
So I also read the packet, but it was very helpful to have the background. But I did look at the resume, and I was very impressed. So I would support the appointment, and I'm ready to move it.
No, they can still discuss it after you move.
So, okay, since I've been prompted, I move to appoint Deborah Dixon as Interim Director of Special Education.
I'd like to second Paul's motion.
You got that, Beth? John? Yes. Any additional discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously, Beth. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Continue on.
Oh, I was going to take this one.
Oh, you're going to
Yeah,
take that? Oh.
Yeah, okay. So our regional agreement, in section 1F stipulates that we have to appoint a treasurer along with our secretary when we restructure. We neglected to do this at our last meeting, so I want to take the opportunity now to ask for a motion to appoint Margaret Dennehy as the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District Treasurer. Margaret has been our treasurer for quite a while now. I actually don't know how many years, but like well before I was here, I think. Yep. So if there are no questions, Marie, did you want to speak to this? 4 or 5. Oh, 4 or 5 years?
I'm sorry. Also that she's very part-time, so it's 4 hours a week, maybe? Just to give you context.
Thank you.
So moved. I moved to, oh, sorry, do you want to?
Well, you can move, we can still discuss.
Yeah.
Sure.
I moved to appoint Margaret Dennehy as the treasurer.
Michael?
I just, I don't have a question, but I just want to add that, I did request the resume to be included into the packet. So I hope that, later on, we can vote that, but, later on we can include that. So, yeah, that would be helpful. Yeah, thank you.
John?
I just wanted to come back to the introductory remark you made that the regional agreement requires this vote to occur at the reorganization meeting. In my view, that's a flaw in the regional agreement. Later tonight, we're going to look at school improvement plans, which also are subject to a policy which has a date in it, which serves no purpose other than to create a technical problem for us from time to time. So I hope that we will track things like this in the regional agreement, and we need to do this by the end of the fiscal year. That's when we need to do it by. That's what the regional agreement should require. The school committee should have flexibility to do that. And when we come back to the school committee, the school improvement plans, we should put similar language in there to not constrain the committee in ways that add no value.
Thank you, John. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you very much. We invite J.D. Head to the podium to update us on our capital improvements over the summer.
Just as JD's getting set up here, I just want to acknowledge, I know a lot of you saw some email chain came in, and a number of emails from abutters to the junior high school around the proposed bus loops. So, we did, and I believe I copied the school committee on it, but we did respond that the intent of the update tonight was not only to provide kind of a broad overview of the capital projects, but really to let the committee know that we're actually studying this further, and we're putting the bus loop on hold until we can continue our conversations with the abutters, but also do some additional engineering work for some questions that arose. So I'll turn it over to JD.
Kind of bury the lead.
Yeah.
Thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight. I just wanted to start very quickly with an update on what we did for FY19. I went through this last night with our capital planning subcommittee. Going through the whole thing, it was probably about a 45-minute discussion, so I'll try and shorten that up and save some time for some questions. And I want to talk a little bit about the connection between the junior high school and the high school around the site work. FY19 projects are closed out, essentially. 100% of the scope was accomplished in all of these jobs, the original scope that was set out for, with the exception of some of the woodwork around the R.J. Gray Junior High School. The carpenter that we had working on that, we actually pulled several times to work on the admin building renovation and then to build the softball dugouts, and now they're back to it. But we're probably going to roll that scope work into FY20, where you'll see we have additional wood and soffit and trim and snow guard work to do on the junior high school is already pre-planned. And so that's 19. I'm happy to take any questions about 19 as we go along. So moving into FY20, just to try and give some information here about our philosophy around doing this work. This is, we're targeting $4 million of capital for FY20. That's 4 times more than we've ever done in a fiscal year since I've worked here. So trying really hard to target some of the work that, in terms of prioritizing time allocation in the department, some of the work that is really time sensitive, meaning it's going to, if we don't finish these projects by mid-August, it will have a negative impact on programs because it usually is space dependent. For example, the R.J. Gray gym floor. We want that finished for the start of the school year, the auditorium house lights. So those things are escalated more, and then some of the HVAC and mechanical work, design work, we can do that over the course of the year, and a lot of those lead into projects for FY21 and beyond. One of the other items on here I wanted to call out specifically, we had stage curtains, bless you. We had stage curtains on the agenda for FY20. Those were purchased, and they were purchased out of from a donation from ABSAF. Just wanted to call that out. That's completed, so then it will come off the capital plan. And the other item that's on here was you guys, took the Middlesex, the donation from Middlesex. That also is part of the high school scoreboard in the field house. So that wasn't part of our capital plan, but that donation, led to that project being completed. So the products are on order and they'll be in for September. This is pretty exciting. Gym floor we talked about. The stage flooring at the R.J. Gray Junior High School, Brennan Hearn, our auditorium guru, said that we could hold on that for a couple years, so we're going to push that back. That's a relatively small project. And everything else on here, again, we can talk more about, but you can see the $110,000 window wood trim repair. That's a continuation of what we had phased for FY19 into FY20. And most notably, I wanted to take a few minutes to pause on the campus site work that Peter started to talk about. In February, March, you guys approved fast-tracking some of the engineering and design work for the campus master plan. The reason why we were wanted to do that was to so we could set ourselves up to be on schedule to complete the site work that we were hoping to do for FY20. One of the items that we talked about was, continuing the milling and paving and parking lot work around the high school. If you remember, we did about a third of it last year. We finished out the other 2/3. We also were targeting Parker Damon building and the admin building, milling and repaving, curbing, et cetera. And then the other thing that we had discussed through the course of the year was a connection between the junior high school and the high school as like just a bus loop connection. So the design work in February, March led to having a design and trying to understand if it was even physically possible to do this. Some grade issues, in that site. So we finished the design. We got a design in hand. We felt like it's physically possible to do, certainly. And at that point, we reached out to our neighborhood, our neighbors in the neighborhood adjacent to us, Minuteman Ridge. And since then, we held one meeting with Minuteman Ridge Board members. We held a site walk, and we had 2 meetings now with direct abutters on this project. They certainly have some concerns around it. I don't think there's any concerns that we can't get past. But that said, you know, whatever we do here, and just to try and, this is the engineer drawing of it. When we first talked about this, I was only displaying, move to this. I was only displaying, like, we were talking, you know, before engineers came in, as just a loop, literally right around the scoreboard, driving through the parking lot, going around and coming out into the other parking lot. Through the design work, you know, we're like, okay, we need to do it this way to avoid, you know, different points of conflict in the junior high school parking, et cetera. So this is a rudimentary drawing of the way it would turn out, right? That's about a 50-foot swath of disturbance in that area. Whatever we do here, we want to make sure we do it right. And we want to make sure we have a plan in place to move students in and out of the high school and the junior high school to these vehicles as they're staged up here. But as Peter said, we also have some design work that is still left to do. And truth is, time is running out. To be able to start this and finish it by September, it's just getting very tight from a timing perspective. So as Peter said, we would like to pause on this and bring it back next year and continue to develop it, continue to work with the abutters, continue to work with our neighborhood friends, and, you know, have something in place that everyone feels great about. But what we would hope to do is kind of couple this with the next year we were planning to do Charter Road redesign as well. So it would be Charter Road and this, and then also the parking areas around the junior high school as well. And that would kind of finish off a 3-year phase kind of campus master plan site work redesign. So I'm happy to take questions about that as well. And on FY20, towards the end here, we have several projects at Blanchard. We completed and submitted an accelerated repair SOI for the roofs and windows. MSBA hasn't announced any awards with those yet. If we were to get that, we would design it this year and implement it in FY21. So we hope to hear back about that soon. I did touch base with MSBA, and they said they hope to make some decisions in the next 6 weeks or so on the accelerated repair. That is it for the capital projects. I'm happy to take any questions about those or the site work or anything like that.
I have a couple questions. First of all, is that this slide, the Blanchard, that first one for first row. So what if that grants is not awarded by the MSBA?
So we've budgeted in the capital improvement plan for the total sum of that project work. So really it would be a bonus if we get the grant from MSBA to partner with them. We would move forward and they would split the cost with us, but we fully funded the liability in the capital improvement plan for FY21.
Can I just comment on that?
Please.
That might be something that as we hear feedback from MSBA, if we see that it's likely that if we waited 1 more year and then they would award the grant, we might delay the project by a year to get reimbursement. But if we're feeling like they're not going to reimburse no matter what we do, then we certainly have the funds available to complete the project.
Okay, my second question is about that annual budget. So that kind of lead me to think that, you know, you will have a different another column saying, you know, the actual cost or something.
I'm sorry.
Because see you have 4 columns, right? A location, project, annual budget, right? So you put annual budget in there. Does it mean that you are going to have a new column?
Yes.
Okay. So what about those 100% complete? Those projects. What about them? Are you there's no change from the original budget, or?
So the top item,
Right, for example, the top one.
yeah, so the top item, our task this year, the scope, if you will, the task was to write the SOI and submit the SOI. So that's why I'm calling that as 100% complete. It didn't have a cost item assigned to it for this fiscal year. Right. Yeah.
Just one more comment on that. Amy Bizowitz and I have already reached out to our website provider, and we're actually planning to do a capital page on the website where anyone in the community quarterly can go in and see this type of a chart updated every quarter, where it tells what progress we're making on certain projects, what the original budget was, what the actual cost of a project was. We're also going to include information on our website about how we manage the stabilization fund as well.
Actually, David and Tom and I hope to sit down next week or the week after and actually reconcile the FY19 so we can put that up and start to deal with the mechanics of FY20 as well.
Just a kind of general observation, because my understanding, we originally talked about Gates and Douglas, and Kona is the third school. And I was browsing through the list, and Kona is not listed there a lot, so I'm just curious. There's not too much. Kona is in pretty good shape. I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yes, absolutely, and thank you for that. Kona, when we first wrote the capital improvement plan, we were still in the process of dealing with MSBA and the school building project and a preferred solution. That was a conscious decision not to roll up a lot of Conant into that. But that said, last year we renovated the front office of Conant. And the year prior we had like kind of a heaving issue with masonry work that we had to do over there. So anything that comes up at Conant, certainly if it's a life safety issue, we're doing that. But mechanically it's very sound. The roof is sound. The windows are old. I mean, it's 1972 building. But I think the long-term plan around Conant certainly rests with the school committee and what we'll be looking at prior to the completion of the school building project that we're currently in. Yeah, absolutely. So we submitted, if you recall, I think in April, at one of the April school committee meetings, you voted to approve the submission of this Conant SOI. So we still are updating and keeping in the pipeline, if you will, or on the burner of MSBA, a Conant building project SOI. Right.
So there was a lot of capital. And I understand from talking to Diane that there was a lively discussion of what that word means last year that came not to conclusion. So I could look at these items and attempt to infer what the definition is. But in your mind, what is the definition of capital?
For me, are you asking me like me in a vacuum? My personal opinion?
Well, you for this audience.
I tend to think of capital personally in a lifespan more than I do in a dollar figure. So as I'm thinking about capital projects, if it's a project that we're going to invest one-time funds in, not counting any kind of reoccurring maintenance or preventive maintenance costs, but a one-time capital investment that's going to sustain itself for minimally a 7-year period, depending on the price tag. Maybe you're looking for 2025 if we're talking about a roof, boiler, et cetera, large-scale things like that. But for me, it certainly is something that's going to, span out, a good solid 5, 7, 10 years.
The follow-up question is, and these particular items seem to be very facilities-oriented. In the way that the capital subcommittee is working, is the intention that this is all-inclusive of all capital items, although it happens to be obviously that most of it is facilities?
Yeah, the capital improvement plan has a $100,000 line item for every fiscal year that is hopefully going to capture the wants and needs that might come up from building leaders, or things that are kind of outside of this predefined scope of work. And a lot of this scope came out of the facilities assessment. And what do we do with this in what was, in 2014, 2015, we're kicking around this conversation of this $120 million liability. So a lot of these projects certainly are taken directly from that and scaling that back into what we feel like are these, most important items. And these are all, you're right, bricks, mortar, nuts and bolts. But there is capacity in this capital plan to work with building leaders and department heads for a certain threshold. But I'm sure there's going to be other things that will come up on if you want to add to that, Peter.
Yeah, so I think, technology is another typical capital need. Amy Bizowitz actually budgets a lot of her capital expenditures right in her operating budget on an annual basis. So computer upgrades, infrastructure upgrades, wireless hubs, things like that are all in the operating budget. The next big capital item on the technology and side of the district is probably going to be a telephone system. But I think there's an opportunity with the new building project to actually include the hub of the telephone system within the general contract of the building project, and that then becomes eligible for reimbursement, but can serve as kind of a backbone that the rest of the district can then expand off of.
I just wanted to piggyback on John's comment about the definition of capital. I thought I saw in the packet that in the meeting minutes for the building committee some discussion about that. I mean, am I recalling that properly? But it's an important question, and I think we should have an understanding that's a common understanding, and not have members of the administration sitting in a vacuum. So yeah, I think it's good that we flush that definition out.
Perhaps that's a good opportunity for the Capital Subcommittee to do. Capital Subcommittee has been great this year. It's first year that we've actually had it. It's been a fantastic sounding board. Adam chairs that, and we've met 5 to 6 times, I believe, over the course of this fiscal year. We met last night, and we have our first meeting for next year planned for September 11th, I believe.
Yeah, I would just add that we did have many discussions about the definition of capital, and some of that informed the stabilization fund policy. So if you look in that policy, we did detail out, at least from the stabilization fund standpoint, what were the capital items that were suitable for use from that fund. So there is a partial definition there, John, but we've struggled with it over a number of meetings, just due to the nature of, is it financial, is it timeline, is it operational technology, all of that. There's not one clear answer.
And I think due to a number of different organizations that we have to report to, having different standards themselves for what's capital. So I think on the financial side, there's one definition. On the DESI side, there's slightly different definition. So it also can present some challenges as we try to report to the various entities if we have a third working definition. It's not that we shouldn't, but it's how do you reconcile, when kind of the drivers of this are different.
Okay, I'm going to have us move on. If you don't mind, you can certainly forward any questions to Peter. You want to talk to us about bus leases?
Yeah, the other thing that we have here tonight, and I appreciate, again, the opportunity for this as well, so we can, move this along to be prepared for September. I realize I saw a couple questions coming in. This might be slightly confusing. The school committee, through the budget process, recommended the addition of 2 additional bus routes for next year. That recommendation, this kind of coincides with, we had a bus lease terminating this year. And the bus lease that we're actually terminating this year are the 6 buses that we procured when we went K through 12 regionalization, pre-K through 12 regional with Acton and Boxborough. That required us to add to our fleet. So those 5 buses have lived their 5 years on their 5-year lease. So those are being turned in. And so the 2 buses that we're looking to lease for this year is rolled into that purchase as well. To make it even more confusing, we are, changing the fleet slightly. We're constantly trying to be as cost conscious and as carbon conscious and as nimble as we can be as an organization. And what we're proposing this year is to add in convert one of our large buses to another smaller bus. We've been taking on a lot more of midday special education transportation, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, doing some of those runs with 1 or 2 kids in a large, 40 or 83 passenger vehicle. So we're trying to be, again, as nimble and as carbon conscious as possible there. So what we're proposing is 7 buses, and it'll bring our net total buses from 47 to 48. We still feel like it leaves us with plenty of spare buses, and one of the other things I know that might be a question this year is, what are some of our options at lease end for these vehicles? We have buyout options, balloon payments, if we wanted to exercise those. The problem with that is that we're then creating a mechanical liability because the reason why we do our 5-year buses is because they're fully under warranty. So we basically have the luxury of having these vehicles full bumper-to-bumper warranty. So if there's any issues, the vendor or the supplier who we buy the buses from comes and gets the bus, takes it to a shop, repairs it, and then delivers it back to us, which is great because we don't really have a sufficient mechanical facility to maintain our buses in that way. So this is what we're proposing. We're asking you to authorize the superintendent to enter into this lease agreement, which is similar to the ones we've done each of the last 3 or 4 years.
Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve that we enter into the lease agreement as JD has proposed.
Any discussion? Michael?
I just have a quick question. So I remember that last July, and we added about 10 additional buses, and then there was a number of that, I remember that the cost per bus was increased from the last contract we had with them, right? So this is a new contract, right? So the number here was copied from this additional 10, or it was still, same as the before?
Absolutely. So the comparison I used in this one, I said the price amount is increased here. I'm comparing it to the lease that's expiring currently. There's only a very slight price increase from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20 on those individual items. And it's a little bit apples to oranges comparison too, because this series of buses has some very specific equipment in it: a wheelchair bus, a 47-passenger vehicle, and again the other smaller vehicle as well. So it's a little bit different in that way.
JD, are we just subject to the whims of the market here? Because the lease price in the summer is quite a bit different than the lease price here.
Yeah.
The lease payments.
So I would say the greatest fluctuation I've seen over the 16 years that we've been doing this is interest rates. So interest rates largely drive the price of an 80. Just to do it more apples, the price of an 83-passenger bus from the manufacturer has been right around $80,000 to $90,000 over that entire time period. What starts to escalate a little bit is the technology we have in them as well, because they come complete with the video monitoring systems, the radio, enhanced GPS, so we can work with the community too in some other areas as they arise. So that plays into it as well.
John?
So I'm perfectly happy to support this motion tonight, but in general, in the context of significant investments that we make on an ongoing basis, it would be nice to see an analysis, obviously, because you have the maintenance records, what has happened in the course of 5 years, and there should be some ability to look and say, if we extended the 6th year, what might we expect our experience to be, to look at that issue. And then to your point about the financing, there's always a classic sort of make versus buy analysis, and it just depends who can get cheaper money as to how that's going to come out. So with the capital and other things, it seems to me that you're probably short a couple of warm bodies, so don't spend 1 minute thinking about that right now, but do expect me to ask about that at some point in the future.
Great.
Adam?
Yeah, I have one last comment as I look through the exhibit here and see that one of the buses is considered an accessible passenger bus. To me, this presents a really unique opportunity as the buses continue to come off lease to work with the Student Services Department and our newly appointed, I'm going to totally mess this up, Assistant Superintendent for Diversity and Inclusion, something like that. But to find ways to take those students who may be taking advantage of the CASE bus service, which by the way is probably more expensive than our standard bus service, and include them in traditional bus routes with their peers through the use of accessible buses.
Any additional discussion? Nora?
As a new member of the committee, I'm jumping into this conversation after you may have already discussed this, but I'm just wondering if there's any possibility on the horizon of electric school buses? Is that something that you've thought of?
It's something that we keep very close. The price point is significantly higher currently. Before we get into that, we need to really think about the infrastructure we would have in place. But once that becomes an economical, viable solution, I would imagine we'll probably be the first ones implementing it. Yeah.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Everyone. Thank you, JD. Okay, on to school improvement plans.
All right, so with school improvement plans, I provided a memo in your packet detailing kind of the lengthy history of how school improvement plans are approved. And just to very briefly recap that, essentially in 2016, state law changed probably for the 25th time in 26 years or something like that. And school improvement plans are continue to be approved by the superintendent, but in consultation with the school committee. State law does not further define what consultation looks like, but state law also stipulates that school improvement plans are the responsibility and rest with the authority of the principal and school councils to develop school improvement plans. They're approved by the superintendent, and then after consultation with the school committee. So as was done last year, what we're doing in terms of consultation is providing all of the school improvement plans to you with an opportunity to provide feedback to me. I'll compile that feedback and provide it to each principal. I will help the principals manage the feedback as well, because they clearly can't necessarily respond to every piece of feedback that they receive, but we can certainly look at the trends and patterns in feedback and see what may be reasonable. But then they also have to consider their school councils as well. So what we're asking for is that if you could please provide me an email with feedback. Please copy Beth, because she will help me compile all of this information and keep it straight. But if you could provide that to me by Friday, June 21st, I think was the date that we requested it in the packet. That allows me to compile it prior to July 1st and get that back to principals so that they can make some revisions over the summer before they roll that out to their schools at the beginning of the year. I will just make a couple of comments on this. One thing, we know that we are in the process of creating a revised district overarching strategy, or which we've referred to sometimes as a strategic plan in the past. That's in revision, and what I didn't want to do is have schools do a complete rework of school improvement plans this year, knowing that we were going to create a revised district strategy and then ask for greater alignment as we proceeded to the future. But what we did ask schools to do were to create goals. We asked for 3 to 5 goals per school, and as a general guideline, we gave them some kind of my own general beliefs about good goal setting and what that looked like, and we did a workshop with our principals around that. And then we asked that 2 of the goals be aligned with the district strategy that we currently have, 1 related to our work around social emotional learning, and 1 related to our work around equity. But what I asked is that each principal take a look at how that work would be reflected in their school within the specific context of where their teachers and students and community is at, and then think about how they might align to the overarching district goals in that area. That allows for personalization, but also a through line with our district strategy to make sure we continue our improvement as a district. I believe that the goals that were presented to you, in my opinion, reflect proper alignment that makes sense, especially for this year, given where we're at. And then again, as we come back to you in the fall with a draft district strategy, with the intent that the schools would then have that opportunity over the entire course of next year to work with school councils to consider how that would reflect in next year's school improvement plans that you see in June. So with that, I'm happy to take kind of any overarching questions, but if you could please send specific feedback to me via email so I can get that to principals.
I see Angie's hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. That's help. So I just have some process questions. So we gave the feedback by the 21st, and you will provide like a district-wide summarized report, or are we going to have a chance to go over this, and what's the process after the 21st?
So the process after the 21st, I'm going to take each member's feedback, compile that into one document per school. So if I'm the Conant principal, I see all of the feedback school committee members provided around the Conant School Improvement Plan. That will get sent off. I'll talk to the Conant principal about what they're doing with that feedback. If there are revisions that are appropriate based on the feedback, that would then get submitted to me for approval. And then I'm the final approval of that afterward. But no, it's not intended to come back to the full committee for a second round.
Paul?
I just want to remind my colleagues to be careful not to copy each other, because that would constitute a deliberation, and that reminds me that, you know, all of our comments are really not they're the voices of our individual preferences, suggestions, and whatever, and as such are not the voice of the committee. So I think that it's important for the administration to understand that whatever suggestions we make are, you know, individual suggestions, not necessarily marching orders.
Tessa?
I noticed that the dates don't reflect this year, so I just wanted to make sure that what was submitted was actually this year's plan. It says 18-19, and actually the update on her last year says 17-18, so my assumption, because I don't recall, it does look like these are different goals than last year, that the dates are just wrong.
The dates are wrong.
And then the other question I had is on Douglas's, the first two goals are the same. Like, they have different narratives, but they're titled exactly the same. So, I mean, they're very similar in content, but there is different words underneath them. So I just wanted to just clarify that.
So originally, when Douglas submitted their plan to me, they originally listed two goals as one goal, but the way it was submitted, it was clear it was two separate goals that were related to each other. So they had put it under one overarching goal, so I asked him to separate those out.
Yeah, another process question. So, really great that you are kind of changing for the next year. So when we are establishing for the next year, are we going to have like a district-wide for the improvement plan? Because every school is different. So are they going to perform like comprehensive needs assessment prior to the improvement plan? Also, are we going to have district-wide essential components that needs to be included in the improvement plan? So, for example, like the facility, how we process, what's that called? The process fidelity, how we evaluate the mattress, how they select the mattress they use, and how we evaluate at the end, how you evaluate the result.
Yes, is the answer to that. I think we're coming back with a different format to our own district strategy. And within that, there'll be kind of a one-page overview, so to speak, so that someone could easily understand what we're doing. But then there'll be some additional detail pages to that then stipulate the actions and various steps that we take. We'll be working with schools to come up with a consistent format to the plans so that they're easily understood. as a district, and they relate to the district overarching strategy. But yes, ultimately, we'll be talking about what are the various components of the school improvement plans. I wanted to take a gradual approach to how we looked at that. And again, knowing that we're going to be going through a major revision this year, coming summer as a district, I didn't want to ask the schools to do that same process twice. So I said to them, keep whatever format you've been using in the past, but here are some things that I look for in goals about quality goal writing. And then knowing that we'll be looking at that again more.
And so to John's point about the date in file BDFA, the procedures -2, it does have a date of June 1st, and I'm wondering if that's the purview of the policy subcommittee, or since it's procedures, can that just be taken care of?
That's administrative.
Yeah, that's administrative, so, yeah, we can maybe change that.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else? Okay, onward. Thank you. Okay, so we are on item 3, ongoing business. This is the last step in the cycle of the superintendent's evaluation. I want to take just a brief moment to thank every one of you who took the time to write really thoughtful summative assessments. It was a joy to read them. It was really interesting to see what came out of that, and it was a labor of love to weave that into what I produced for you. So the process right now will be that I will read that, the summative, and then ask for a motion. We will discuss it, introduce any amendments that we so wish to the document, and then vote on it. That will be followed by a discussion of the salary increase that we are required to consider annually for the superintendent's salary based on our evaluation. So with no further ado, I will go ahead. This is in your packet, so if you want to follow along, please feel free to do so. This has been a great first year for Peter. This is the overwhelming sentiment of the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee in its 2019 evaluation. More specifically, members noted that Peter is an invested leader who engages in tough conversations with respect and compassion, is a good fit for our district, and a joy to work with. Members felt that after the past several years of tumult and inconsistency in our leadership structure, Peter has brought stability, transparency, and an openness that seems to put everyone at ease. Members were impressed with his thorough and close-up investigation of our district and appreciated his entry findings, especially the scaffolding and structure it provided for a continued conversation that had already been happening on an ad hoc basis around culture and education, maintaining academic rigor while reducing stress and improving mental health. Members express admiration for Peter's forthrightness and willingness to bring past initiatives to fruition while continuing to ask questions about initiatives that have stalled. We feel he is deeply thoughtful about what he heard and learned this year, that he is a gifted orator and negotiator and able to diffuse uncomfortable situations with knowledge, authority, and humor. Members believe that the district is currently at a crossroads in that Peter has set realistic, robust goals and articulated a vision for areas where we have room to improve while also recognizing excellence in our programming. We consider his entry plan a blueprint for change and a great start to the hard conversations that the district and community need to have. Members feel that next steps are going to be difficult and will challenge the status quo, and that those who are uncomfortable with change will have to decide if they are committed to the vision for the future. We would like to see the priorities identified in it transformed into goals, policies, guidelines, and best practices that will help move the Acton-Boxborough learning community to the next level. Okay, the first standard is instructional leadership. Here's what you had to say about that. Members appreciated that Peter has prioritized teaching and learning as a future district goal and has highlighted the importance of addressing diversity in students' learning needs, styles, interests, and readiness. It's clear that Peter wants to prepare all our students well for life after high school. Members noted that his consistent messaging around calibration in key areas such as teacher evaluations, social-emotional skill building, anti-bias training through staff participation in the SEED program, aligning of school improvement plans with district goals, and promoting a shared commitment to the idea that all students need to be loved, valued, challenged, and supported. Members were truly impressed that Peter has so quickly achieved a strong working knowledge of our district's strengths and challenges in the area of teaching and learning, and guided by rigorous data collection, has begun to scaffold change. Members view the coaching model and new high school schedule as functional examples of this. Several members commented they appreciated the way Peter balanced the unique character and focus of our elementary schools with greater cohesion around best practices in targeted areas. Suggested areas to improve include strengthening the connection between school improvement plans and measurable outcomes, and developing a principal evaluation tool, which one member noted is a goal that Peter has identified as having the potential to positively impact teaching and learning. There was an interesting rift between members who wanted increased transparency by making the following documents public: teacher evaluations, survey data, and college admission statistics. These members suggested that this would not only be beneficial, but would serve as one of the most important data points in addition to MCAS that should inform adjustments to teaching and learning. However, other members commented on the critical importance of empowering a data inquiry team, or data inquiry teams, of educators, building leaders, and parents and guardians to identify and vet how educational programming could be improved at multiple levels, not just high-stakes testing, through the use of both quantitative and qualitative data, as well as ClearGov data benchmarking. Okay. Standard 2 is management and operations. Peter received several exemplary ratings on this standard. Members noted continual progress this year in how Peter manages processes by going beyond task completion to thinking about longer-term planning. An example of this is the capital improvement plan. Peter oversaw the final stages of the development of the district's capital improvement plan, which had a limited scope and sequence and lacked clear funding sources when he arrived in AB. He was actively involved in all stages of its development, and there was broad consensus among committee members that he did an exceptional job presenting the plan to school committee, town boards, and community groups. He also received an exemplary rating from members for the FY20 budget process, which not only reflects district goals and stays very close to a 2% increase, but also brought to fruition our long-term vision for our aforementioned capital needs. Additionally, under Peter's leadership, the school committee instituted policies for the district's reserves and capital stabilization funds, which also demonstrates long-term vision and planning. Peter also worked diligently to become a resource and spokesman for the new school building project, and ensured that we were meeting all requirements of the feasibility and design stages in the MSBA process. He quickly acquired a detailed working knowledge of this project so that in a very short time it became impossible to tell that he had not been involved since its inception. Although some of our MSBA targets have not been met this year, members noted that we have remained largely on track, and Peter has demonstrated that he is more than capable of helping to manage this massive project. Regarding general operations, several members praised Peter for his transparency around our historical use of legal counsel for special education cases, and emphasized the need for Peter to continue to ensure compliance with state and federal laws and mandates, school committee policies, ethical guidelines, and our various agreements. Suggested areas to improve in this standard include the following. As we begin to implement our capital improvement plan, one member emphasized the need to develop protocols that allow stakeholders a more proactive voice in projects along the lines of an open government partnership. Several members would like to see Peter continue to work on improving bus service to ensure student safety, and several members urged Peter to use root cause analysis to continue to develop plans to address students' mental health needs. And I'm quoting here, "The more we do this, the better we will be able to address the challenges we are seeing in our schools." I inserted a word on equity here. This is not a standard, but there are some important comments made about equity. Members indicated that they feel the district is making progress on equity issues. This is our district improvement goal number 4, and that the values of equity and inclusivity were more consistently applied this year and the strategic actions met. But members emphasized that we can't say that we have met the intent of this goal. For example, we feel our existing practices around family contributions for school supplies and field trip assistance is a great first step. If you remember, we got rid of family contributions, so we're taking care of those, and offering field trip assistance to those who are on free and reduced lunch. But there is broader concern with the level of outside fundraising that goes to support educational and extracurricular programs, which led one member to wonder how many students don't perform in a play, compete in a sport, or choose an elementary school because of the burden of additional expected donations to support these activities. Members felt we should be doing more to remove the financial burden from those who want to but cannot participate. Moreover, while members overwhelmingly applauded the work the district has done to introduce more rigor into the hiring process and are aware that securing a more ethnically and culturally diverse staff in education is a problem throughout the Commonwealth, we want to see results. As one member put it, I think this goal needs a commitment, not just an effort. Standard 3 is community, family, and community engagement. Peter received several exemplary ratings on this standard. Members appreciated that Peter opened his office door to the community as soon as he joined AB and established many channels to hear different voices. He invited families to take part in the school community and share their input. He attended monthly roundtables with parent-teacher organization boards, and he participated in a cultural conversation in December, it's actually on December 5th, in which Peter's ability to raise important and challenging issues combined with his adeptness in conveying his deep appreciation for understanding different perspectives won him the respect and trust of attendees. In addition to noting Peter's participation on district and town boards, such as the School Building Committee and the Acton Leadership Group, members noted that Peter was a constant presence at school and community forums and events, often in the evenings and on weekends, including, just to name a few, Pfeiffer's Day back in 2018 in Boxborough, in which he made a point of attending even prior to his official start date of July 1st. The Acton Chinese Language School's annual Chinese New Year celebration, the Madrigals concert, and countless other school, choral, and theatrical performances and celebrations. Like, it could have filled at least a page. He attended a recent screening of Schindler's List at the high school, which was followed by a conversation with Rena Finder. He participated in the Out of the Darkness Walk for suicide prevention held in April, and many, many, many other events, too numerous to reiterate here. Peter provided updates twice per month to families on issues important to the community and often featuring the work that students, teachers, and staff were doing across the district. For instance, participating in Special Olympics, recognition of clubs, sports teams, teachers, and departments who had won awards, etc. One member mentioned hearing many community members remark on the clarity and depth of Peter's communiques to the community, including those about losing a student early in the summer to suicide, and addressing several hate crimes that took place at the high school and the junior high school. Lastly, we have Standard 4, which is professional culture. Members commented that Peter has high standards personally and fosters a commitment to high standards in others. Members pointed to the strength and integrity of his responses on difficult issues as examples of his commitment to building and maintaining a professional culture. It was also noted that he quickly built a strong working relationship with his senior leadership and district leadership teams and developed enough trust that he is delegating work as appropriate. One member described the sense of cohesion, unity, and respect between building-based and district leadership teams this year as palpable. Suggested areas to improve include fostering a commitment to high standards with the rest of the community and strengthening a commitment to high standards and professionalism between the senior leadership team and all school committee members. In conclusion, members overwhelmingly noted that Peter exceeded their expectations of a new superintendent in many areas. He is extremely committed, intelligent, and hardworking, and members were unanimous in their enthusiasm to continue the work of the district together. For these reasons, the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee hereby gives the rating of proficient to Peter Light, Superintendent of the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District, on the indicators of instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture, and we thank him for his work on behalf of our students. So I will entertain a motion at this point, and then we will enter into discussion, and I would like to hear from as many members as care to comment.
Move to accept?
Yeah, the annual summative review.
Yeah, that was going to finish. The annual summative review. Thank you very much.
wants to go first? Tessa?
So I've often reflected this whole year back on the discussions that occurred when we were searching for you to come work for our district, and how much fear and anxiety there was around the idea about hiring someone who did not have previous superintendent experience. And I have to tell you that throughout this year, every meeting I have sat in on with you or attended that you were presenting or anything else, I would never remember that you didn't have prior superintendent experience. And I think that all of those anxieties have flown out the window. They were not mine personally, but I know that there was many who were unsure whether a district as large and complicated as ours could be run and handled, and all of the initiatives that we already had in the pipeline and everything else could be handled by someone who did not have prior experience. So I really thank you, because I think that you've taken it all in stride, and I imagine that many people have forgotten that you didn't have prior superintendent experience. So I think it's quite impressive. So thank you.
Maya?
I'll start by thanking you, Diane, for a wonderful summary that I think was a really good analysis of probably what many people wrote, but certainly I saw my own thoughts and ideas reflected, and it was very well done and polished, and thank you so much. I can't imagine how much work that was. And in fact, thank you for all the work you've done this year. So this I thought was a wonderful culminating document that is testament to how much good work has been done this year and pursued by Peter. And I thought I didn't have or really listen to any of the anxieties about your prior experience, because what I thought was most interesting about you as a candidate was the amount of time you spent in one district in Franklin. And I thought anyone who can work for that long and just continue to navigate working in a district and with the same people, or more or less, is a person who has good relationships and impresses everyone, and is challenging to or faces challenge as well. And I just think all of that has come to fruition and is very evident in this evaluation. And I'm grateful for all the work everyone's pursued, but I think the leadership is really key, and thank you.
Michael?
I would say that I could see a lot of change, those good change. I appreciate, and also I want to say that the summary really says all, and thank you very much for your hard work. Thank you.
Angie?
Yeah, I also want to thank you that want to just bring a fact that I don't know how many night that you spend with AB events, because I kind of feel like every event that I go, that I see you there. And you're really in and engaged in and hear, listen to people and listen to the community. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Since we're just going around the circle here. What strikes me most is the person who I met through our site visits, and what everybody in Franklin said about you, Peter, really continued to hold true as you joined the community here. I responded to the fact that you were someone who felt very comfortable in your skin and were very genuine and honest. And what was really great about having you then join our community is that clearly wasn't a show, right? You came in here and you were genuine and honest. You were comfortable in your skin. You took the thumps, and you still sort of stood up and represented the district in a really honorable and great way.
I could echo a lot of what's been said, but I was in that meeting the very first time we were able to interview you, and the sense in the room after the interview was over was this kind of, wow, this is wow. we, this is amazing. And everything that I've seen going forward just reinforces those initial impressions. I really appreciate the way that you have embraced the entire community. It's clear that you come to these events because you enjoy doing it. And it's clear that you enjoy working with Marie and Deb and Dawn. It's clear in the way that you interact with each other. After only 1 year, it feels so natural. But my favorite thing about what you have brought to the table is that everything that comes up, whether it's budget or different issues, it always ties back to the students. It's very clear to me that the steps that you are taking tie directly back to students. And I appreciate that. That's what we want.
I'll be very brief, but I have been very impressed with your integrity, which I think is the most important quality we can have in a superintendent. And I appreciate your thoughtfulness, your deep thought, and the fact that you really are willing to entertain some of the tougher conversations that we're going to have as a district in a way that, I feel comfortable that you'll be able to steer it to minimize divisiveness and other negative impacts. Because your entry report showed that you see those things, you name those things, and they are things that we are going to have to take on. So really appreciate that.
So after we hired you, you were meeting with individual committee members just as an introduction, and I remember kind of offhand mentioning a desire to review the security systems that we had implemented in the past few years, and I had almost forgotten about it. But when September came along, you brought it up again and set it up with JD, and we took the tour, and I was very impressed that you remembered the request. And so it was those kinds of little things that really helped make the difference. It showed me that you were listening and you cared, and I found the summary that Diane provided to be accurate, and so given a number of years past, this year was kind of a relief, so thank you.
Mary, did you want to say anything?
I would just say I agree with everything everyone said, and thank you.
Sure.
I lost it.
Michael?
It's not about Peter, it's about Mary. Last meeting, I didn't get a chance to thank you for your so many years service to this community. Thank you.
Sorry. I also, one thing I noticed right off the bat is that it's a clear collaboration, and whenever you do something and we say, oh, that was great, your first response is, yeah, it's a team. Everybody else is working hard, and you never fail to thank the people on your team. So.
Okay. Do I get to say something too? So I just want to say that I think the mark of a really good leader is to achieve scope in helping people stretch themselves and stretch their thinking and evolve in their thinking and inspire you to do your best work. And it has been my pleasure and my privilege to be the first chair during your tenure here, so thank you. So I do have one amendment to this that was sent to me. So I will read it out to you. It's the paragraph in Instructional Leadership where it talks about a rift. It's the last paragraph in there on page 2. So I'll just reread the first sentence, and then this would be the insertion to that paragraph. The sentence currently reads, "There was an interesting rift between members who wanted increased transparency by making the following documents public: teacher evaluation, survey data, and college admission statistics." So after statistics, the amendment, I would add, "Given our high school's major task is college preparation and over 96% of our graduates go to colleges, this makes sense." So I will go ahead and add that if there are no objections or no further discussion on it. No? Okay. Thank you. So we do need to actually complete the vote, so seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So the motion, oh, John, yep, and Nora, did you want to abstain too? So two abstentions. So the motion to accept the annual summative review for Superintendent Peter Light, dated June, do we need a date too? Like a day, June 13th, 2019, as amended, is unanimously approved. Thank you so much.
So first, I just want to thank all of you. You know, I had an opportunity to read through all of the individual evaluations that you submitted, and it was great to hear, you know, not only things that you found to be positive, but also areas that you think I can continue to grow, and we can continue to grow as a district. I'm very much looking forward to continue along that path. You know, and I'll say this, Amy kind of took the steam away from me at the end here, but you know, as you talk about some of the positive things that have happened this year, at times it's actually embarrassing to be the superintendent and listen to that, because I feel like I end up taking credit for a lot of the work of others, and oftentimes that's publicly the way it tends to play out. But, you know, I'll start with, you know, every teacher and every assistant in our district and every staff member that we have are really the people on the front lines that do all of this work and work with our kids on a daily basis. But I have to tell you, the administrative team this year, you know, from each of the principals through each central office staff member and the assistant superintendents and Marie as deputy superintendent, you know, to come in and put up with me and all of my questions and missteps throughout the year. And, you know, and there have been many, you know, there's no doubt, being a new superintendent and being someone new in a new place, you're going to have a lot of missteps, and that's a given. But to really have enough, you know, faith to allow me to kind of come back to the table, work through challenges. But I have to tell you, the quality of the people in this district is just unsurpassed. And I want to put that front and center, because all the positive work that's happened this year would not have happened had there not been multiple years of planning ahead of my arrival and then the execution that's taken place. So I just want to make sure I say kudos to everyone else, because it's been a tremendous year for me. I'm very excited about the work we did. I'm even more excited about the work we will do, and I'm thrilled to be working with all of you. Thank you so much for the feedback, but also thank you to everyone that I've worked with this year, because, you know, you're really the people that have made this happen. So thank you.
Okay, so part two of this is that I'm also looking for another motion to set the superintendent's salary increase. This is a point in the meeting where we would discuss, and we're going to do it in open meeting. As part of his contract employment, states that annually we do have to discuss an increase in the salary and then put it into the addendum of the contract. So I have provided some materials for your consideration that you should have these before you. I went ahead using MASC data and calculated the percent increase from FY17 through FY18, which is the most recent data available to me. In any kind of meaningful way, there's like only about a handful of districts that reported out to MASC the superintendent's salary for FY19. So I just used the data from the previous fiscal years. But this is really just to give you a sense of what the range is for increases in salary for superintendents over that period of time. And then that's followed by a memo that was given to us in open meeting back on January 11th, 2018 by our interim superintendent, Bill McAuliffe, when we were discussing setting the salary, the initial salary for Peter Light. And it also has comparable data, just so you can kind of locate his current salary in the context of what was going on at the time in comparable districts. So that's the basis upon which we should embark on a discussion of a salary increase if we choose to do so. So I think should I take your question now, or I guess I should. All right. Did you have a question, John, right away?
I'd like to make a comment, and
Okay.
I think there's some merit in having some discussion before somebody actually puts a motion on the floor.
For sure.
And so the comment starts out with, whenever we consider the question of compensation, it's important to look at the contract and see compensation as everything that is represented as a contract provision. And anybody who's looked at executive contracts knows that from time to time, there are interesting provisions in there, and that is true of some superintendent contracts. You know, as a credit to Peter and to the committee, this contract is clean. And everybody should recognize that, because when you look at other contracts, that's not always the case. You know, there could be an auto allowance or some other things that really inflate compensation beyond the salary that's going to be voted. So although Diane has done a nice job of comparing these, I just want to slightly caution people that unless you look at the total contract and look at every provision, you don't know for sure, you know, that these numbers are truly comparable. The second thing that I wanted to say is that when we look at compensation, in addition to this external equity question relative to other superintendents, we always also need to read across the district, so that regardless of what level of compensation we're looking at, superintendent, administrators, principals, teachers, other support staff, you know, we need to see those and make sure that relative compensation makes sense. And obviously, we're not going to go through an extensive discussion of that tonight, but I would hope that each time we bring this up, that would be on the table as part of what we're going to do. And then the last thing that, you know, always has to come into these discussions is to understand what, you know, our financial circumstance actually is, which in this sense, I think, looking at our budget and how we decided we could manage the budget for this year becomes reflective of our sense of the communal circumstance. And, you know, in different years, things can happen. If we go into recession, you know, that's a different world for us. If state aid suddenly, you know, got cut substantially, that would be a different world for us and would impact these discussions. So I just wanted to say all of that as preamble for whatever else other people want to contribute in terms of specific details relative to the compensation decision.
Thank you, John. And I'll just add that, you know, in preparation for this meeting, I did consult with Peter about his thoughts as well on this topic. And what he told me is that he would like to be compensated no more than any other person in this district is compensated. And we typically, for non-union personnel, increase their salaries by 2.5%. So that was his wish, to not exceed that number. I just wanted to communicate that to you prior to discussing it as a committee. Adam?
You know, I was going to look to John to provide me the analysis of the salary, but seeing that you didn't, John, I quickly did it myself, and I just want to provide everybody with that quick overview. There are two measurements. John is going to correct me, I'm sure. The average of the percentages of raises in this comparable community, the average is 3.06%. What may be more informative is the median, which is the middle number of all of those. I will admit to having Googled the difference between those. And that one came in at 2.85%. So just to help provide some additional context to this file here.
Anyone else? Paul.
So just thinking about, you know, the budget situation and the years looking forward, and I think I've talked about this several times in the past couple of years about the tsunami that's coming. I was kind of looking at the range of the upper range at being 2.5% myself, simply because that's, you know, the taxing to the max number. But having given my evaluation and reading the summary of everybody else's, I certainly think we're talking at the top of that range.
Tessa?
Well, although it's nice to see what other districts do in terms of salary increase, I think that the most important thing to look at is what we do within our own district, because it would be, wildly inappropriate to give someone a huge, like 4 or 5% increase when that's not how we typically compensate other members of our central office team. So it is interesting to note that 2.5% is what we do usually.
Anyone else? Michael?
Because Adam talked about the average. I would say that, if you look at the rating, their number is 0.1%, and then if you look at the last one was 9%. So we should, when we talk about the average, we should get rid of those two, and then, and another, factor we have to consider is that, we have to inline between our school district and other, similar school district. For example, the Harvard is not, right? Harvard is more smaller, and then probably, Lexington or, Lincoln Sudbury, those are probably more in line with. So we should, take those into the consideration when we think of, this increase rate. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so calculating 2.5% on his current salary would yield a salary of $201,925. So the motion would be to set the superintendent's salary at $201,925 for FY20 and approve the proposed amendment to the addendum to Mr. Light's contract. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve, I'll move that the school committee set the superintendent's salary at $201,925 for fiscal year 20, and approve the proposed amendment to addendum I to Mr. Light's contract.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Okay. So, Adam, you want to give us a school building committee update?
Yes, I'd like to thank Mary for sending me some good detailed notes to share, even though she's right there. So the designs are moving along nicely for the building project. We're seeing regular updates from the architect at Arrow Street. The district did attend the MSBA's facility assessment review meeting earlier last week. It all moves very quickly. Their responses to our proposed design were very positive. The description that I got was it felt like a very different meeting than the first time that we were there in front of the FAS committee. So it was a very positive response. We also received our response to the preferred schematic report that we submitted to the MSBA, and we then responded to those questions just yesterday, I believe. And our PSR, our preferred schematic report, will be voted on by the MSBA board on June 26th. We expect their approval, at which point we will move on to the next phase in that process, which is the schematic design phase. In other news, our committee did meet just yesterday, and we did vote unanimously to go with a construction manager at risk approach. So there are two main approaches to doing this construction work. One is to set out a bid package and have a contractor bid on that work, and it's a very sort of straightforward type of project where then you will receive change orders and have to pay for a number of those changes that deviate from the bid package that you submitted. The other method is the construction manager at risk, where we engage with the construction manager earlier in the process, and they help advise us on some of the design aspects
so that we can mitigate some of that risk, and the construction manager takes on some of that risk as well. And we negotiate a price up front for the services of that construction manager to do that. They deliver a guaranteed maximum price, is what it says here in my notes. And then lastly, the school building committee held a public forum here in this room on June 10th. It was attended by 28 community members. That's not including school committee, school building committee administration members who were here. It was a very large group. It was a great turnout. 1 out of 5 of those people here were parents, and 4 out of 5 of those were community members with children in the district. There was a great diversity of questions that were asked around the site circulation, the safety of the building, the energy, net zero, parking, use of the boardwalk, classroom layouts, playground plans, sort of every aspect was asked. I will add that that was streamed live or presented live on ActonTV and recorded, so it should be available for those who wish to review it. And then lastly, the school building committee will have a booth this Saturday at Pfeiffer's Day at Flora Meadows and Boxborough.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Okay, as far as updates are concerned, I have Acton Select Board, the Select Boards of Acton and Boxborough, and the Acton Leadership Group and Boxborough Leadership Forum. So if anyone has an update, now's the time to jump in. So Paul.
So the Board of Selectmen, Acton Board of Selectmen voted to approve the waiver of the posting at town meeting to object to the transfer. So that was, John Benson had some very pointed questions, and they were very good questions. He was just seeking to understand what it was we were, what the board was doing for us. Peter was very sharp and very good answers, and that gained the support of, unanimous support of the board.
My understanding is the same happened in Boxborough. Does anyone need context for this? No? Okay. Okay. Any other reports?
I was just going to say Pfeiffer's Day is on Saturday, so you should go.
So Tessa and I wanted to take a moment to draw your attention to the subcommittee assignments in your packet. We're coming in really early this year, so we can do this really thoughtfully and put a process in place that makes sense. So Tessa and I are going to kind of split up this list and really briefly just tell you what are these committees, the time commitment for these committees, and I just want to say that other boards, when you join other boards, municipal boards, for instance, you're asked to take on a commitment more than just showing up to meetings. Everyone takes on an additional commitment, and everyone's busy. You do what you can, but we're going to ask that when you look at this list, consider what time you have to give, but pick something and make a commitment to it. It doesn't have to take up a lot of time, but it's important that everyone kind of stay engaged. So I'm going to ask you to really seriously consider which among these committees you feel, or liaisonships, you feel you'd be most comfortable participating, and consider taking on this kind of role. We do have kind of a right of refusal for existing members on certain committees, but just please note that these are open meetings and you can observe. You just can't have your school committee hat on. You go in as a member of the public. We have like a special disguise you can wear, and you just sit in the gallery, and kind of away from the table, and then you're meeting the requirements of the open meeting law, and you can't participate. You can ask questions, I suppose, as a community member, and you cannot vote. We ask that you send Tessa your areas of interest ahead of time. Like, so the July workshop would be our deadline, so we'll send a reminder out, but if you could send a note to Tessa saying what committees or which liaisonships you're interested in, that would be very much appreciated. And the assignments the August meeting? Okay, will be assigned on during the August meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to Tessa to talk about some of the larger committees.
So one of the things I shared with Diane that was hard for me when I started on school committee was that I was just sort of thrown into it, and people were like, okay, there's a spot. And I think when I started, actually, I was the only really new member, I believe. And so, you know, do you want to do that, Tessa, or, you know, whatever. One of the things that wasn't shared so much was that there are some general meeting times that some of these committees, particularly budget and policy, when they generally meet. A lot of that is because members of central office attend those meetings, and so I know that we ran into some trouble this year with policy because it was hard to find people to meet. One of the things that we've also thought about is that we should cap those particular committees, or any subcommittee, really at 5, because it's too hard to get a quorum otherwise. So, with that said, I'm going to speak to the subcommittee. So the budget subcommittee generally meets twice a month, and it's in the morning, not early in the morning generally, but we work around when the senior leadership team meets, aside from us, and so that's generally when that meets. The policy subcommittee prior to this year used to meet the same day, usually, actually, as the budget subcommittee, and the meetings were often back to back. I don't know going forward if that's the wish of people that were on policy sub, but I think that we were able to meet more frequently when it met in the morning. The calendar survey subcommittee was something that was created this year, and I believe that our work was not completely done, and that Marie had said that there would still be work to do. That subcommittee, I don't even remember when we met. Right, we met a handful of times, but I mean in terms of the time of day, but it was during the day. It was during the day and not at night. The capital improvement subcommittee is currently working, and it sounds like you guys have been meeting at night. Okay. The debt strategy subcommittee we've already established, so you don't need to send me any information saying you'd like to be on that committee, because we've already voted those members for that one. Negotiations, I believe, is the same. We had decided that negotiations started this year and will continue into this year, so that subcommittee is also all set. Policy I spoke to. The protocol subcommittee, I believe we are done with. I don't know if we officially disbanded that, but we worked on the protocols and presented them, and we had well, we don't have the laminated sheets tonight, but we had put together that came out of the protocol subcommittee. So you don't need to send me that you want to be on that, because it doesn't exist. The school building committee has been already established, and then the warrant signature subcommittee. There's been a lot of talk about whether we actually, I don't know that do we need a subcommittee for that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So that's your availability generally during the day. Rebecca sends out those requests often when we don't have school committee meetings that week for us to come in and sign. So if you are not generally available during the day to come by and sign those during school hours, then don't volunteer for that one. I think that covers. Does anyone have any questions about what I shared?
Angie, and then Michael.
Can I suggest to have just a written note on the frequency and the description? So
A written
everybody-
description?
Yeah.
We can
it just-
follow up with that.
Yeah.
If you want to kind of just check off the ones that are kind of open right now, are budget subcommittee, policy subcommittee, the warrant signature subcommittee, which is actually really important. They can't issue checks without 3 signatures, so that's greatly appreciated. And the calendar survey committee. So those are the ones to consider for the standing committees. And then I will just quickly go over the liaisonships. So EDCO is an educational collaborative that does a lot of professional development, and they run a roundtable. We ask at least one member to go. More than one can go. It's a really great professional development opportunity. They're held, I think they have 6 of them, and they start like in October. They're usually from like 9:30 to 11 at the EDCO, this McSweeney Center in Billerica. It's a short drive, and they're well worth it. It's a chance to network with other school committee members on various topics. The PTSO liaison coordinator, so that's a group of, it's basically either the chair or the vice chair of all of the PTSO, PTO, PTFs meet once a month at the high school in the evenings. That's an evening meeting, it's like 7:30. And that's also a really great chance to hear about what's going on in our buildings, and that's open as well. Tessa and I did that together, so there could be more than one person going to those. The CPAC requires a liaison. That was actually very popular. We had 3 people volunteer for that, and that really worked well because we all couldn't go, and we could cover for each other. We couldn't all go. We could if we wanted to, but they felt very supported by us, and they have, I don't know if this will continue, but they usually go out to lunch once a month with the director of special ed, which is kind of nice, and then they have an evening meeting as well. So there's a day and a nighttime option if you're interested in connecting with the CPAC. And these are also extremely important in their evening commitments. We need a liaison to the Acton Board of Selectmen, the Boxborough Select Board, and both towns' FinComs. So if you're interested in that, please submit something in writing to Tessa. That's a once a month commitment in the evenings. Anything else? And then, so there's a Minuteman Tech liaison as well. Minuteman Tech, that's kind of been quiet over the last few years, but we do need that position filled, and that person would work with Pam Nurse, who is the Acton rep on the Minuteman School Committee, with any issues that arise that affect us, and just to keep us posted on what's going on down there in Lincoln. And then there's a legislative liaison. Ginny filled that role, and that's just reaching out to the reps, legislatures on the state level, and just keeping us apprised of what's going on the state level, and there's a lot going on the state level. So that's, if you're into placing what we do in the wider context of what goes on in the state, that's also a really great position to volunteer for, and that's also open to more than one person. And, HIT? Okay, yes, and so, yeah, thank you, that's very important. So the Health Insurance Trust, Mary Brolin was participating in that and representing the school committee on that. We have representation, one school committee member, and then our district treasurer, Margaret Dehaney, thank you. She sits on that as well. Mary has retired her seat from school committee, so I know that John Peterson is interested in taking over and being appointed. I don't think that's a vote. I think that's just a school committee chair appointment.
Right, but in fairness to everybody, people should have the opportunity if somebody
right, and
wanted
so
to
I
do
want to
it.
throw out there, yep.
But yes, I would, appreciate the opportunity to continue to work on health insurance.
Okay, yes. And, yes. And I just want to say that I attended HIT meetings all year, and John, who's not on the committee, just there as an interesting community member, was just incredibly engaged and knowledgeable. We would be well represented should you take that post. So if there's any other interest, speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so John? Okay, I hereby appoint you. I think that is it. If you have any questions, please contact Tessa, and we look forward to seeing who's interested in doing what in August. Okay, a quick word on the change of venue. Oh, I do. Oh, sorry, Michael. Go ahead.
It's not a question, just because, Tessa mentioned that, we will cap the subcommittee. I know that there already capped for the budget subcommittee, right? So because we have 11 members, so just hope that each member, at least in one very important committee, one is policy and then one is budget. So,
yes.
Yeah, that's
yes,
my hope. So
yeah,
that's my hope.
Yes,
so,
and the reason why we made that smaller was because we were having to actually cancel meetings.
Yeah, I know that, yeah.
It was just too hard to get a quorum. But thank you for that. Okay, as you know, we've been exploring the option of moving our, I'm sorry, I'm not looking to my right. Angie.
Just to clarify, so when the committee is capped, does that mean all members on the committee will continue, or are we gonna just can you clarify that?
Not necessarily. We are saying that the number that we will, the policy subcommittee, I believe this year started with more than 5 people on it, and it just didn't work out trying to find a quorum to find a meeting time. No, the subcommittees that Diane mentioned that are open to people joining them, are open to people joining them. So Diane spoke to that there is some sense of, like right of refusal if you were already on it, but there are people that are leaving budget subcommittee. So, we'll look at it and we'll look at the balance. As Michael said, those are two very important subcommittees that not only are, people want to be in the know, but it's a good place to gather information and to learn how the school district works. And so we would look at making sure, I don't want the budget and the policy subcommittee to be the same 5 people, as each other.
Okay, so we've been exploring moving our venue to the administration building auditorium. I think we were there, twice, and we liked it. So I went ahead and explored actually making this move with Marie and with Peter. We toured the facility with Brendan. We think we can make it work. We're working with ActonTV. We have the town of Acton has a memorandum of understanding with them. So we're working through the details of that. We're pricing out what it's going to cost to outfit that room with the technology we need to get going there. And it looks like this will happen sometime in the fall, hopefully, fingers crossed. And in the meantime, we've reserved this venue and that venue in the hopes that that will open up for us in the fall. But if it doesn't, we'll have maybe a few more meetings here before a permanent move over to the admin building. Do you want to add anything?
I think this is always important to note, as we're looking at outfitting that with the appropriate technology to be able to use for our meetings, we also want to always think of everything we do as having multiple purposes and not just setting up a room just for school committee meetings. So we're really looking at expanding the functionality of that space as a professional learning space for all sorts of activities across the district, and also thinking of more student uses for community ed and being able to use that multifunction. So just want to make sure we reiterate that point, that it's not just being used for school committee meetings.
Okay, we are almost at the finish line here. We have a statement of warrants to read and approval of minutes. So why don't we do the minutes first? Hopefully everyone had a chance to review those in the packet. They are the minutes from May 23rd, 2019. Do I hear a motion to approve? Okay, any amendments, reactions? No. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion. Oh, Ginny abstains. Motion passes. Okay, there are 10 warrants on the agenda now being circulated, so if you haven't signed it, please do so. Vendor warrants 19-024, 19-025, and 19-025PR in the total amount of $3,118,597.37, and student activity fund warrants 19-024 and 19-025 for each of Blanchard Junior High and Senior High in the total amount of $98,634.55. And finally, payroll warrant P1925 in the total amount of $2,609,026.37.
So you'll also find a memo in your packet from High School Principal Larry Dory requesting that the school committee accept a series of very generous donations. And so we would like to request your support and vote to accept the list of donation as noted in the packet.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
Move to approve with gratitude.
Second.
You can pick, Beth. All in favor? Let's try that again. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
Yeah. So I just wanted to draw your attention to one thing under FYI, and I will note that as of 9:30, the 2.5-hour mark, things do deteriorate. But we had a very, very generous donation, the amount of $500. With came of a conversation the committee had a number of meetings ago regarding homeless students and the needs of homeless students and less advantaged students within our district. And so we had a donation of $500 to really do anything that we could to just benefit that student population. We've decided not to just make that a one-time donation, but we actually set up a fund to benefit homeless and students who might have economic needs. And it's not limited to just how students access our school programs, but because these are donations, this is really a discretionary fund for anything that students might need that comes to our level. That fund is going to be administered by Dawn Bentley, and she will have ultimate authority and discretion to, find out what students need across our district. And so we're hoping to collect more donations as time progresses and be able to make this a first donation of something that's lasting and really impactful. But we, accept that with a lot of gratitude.
Our next meeting is a workshop. This is, we start the whole cycle again on July 16th. We have a really great workshop planned for you, and we're looking forward to starting off a new year together. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing you there. August 6th is our next business meeting. And what? Do you want to mention it?
Yep. Just to note that before the workshop, there are some articles that Diane and I are going to share with you that we would really like you to read before the workshop. So we'll send them with enough advance that you have plenty of time.
The workshop is going to be at Sargent Library in Boxborough, 5 p.m.
In terms of the workshop, have you programmed out the whole time, or will there be some time for topics that might be of interest to members?
It's pretty programmed, John. It's not, there will be room for that. That's not the priority of the workshop itself, but there will be some time for that. Angie?
Well, we get more details about the 24th, 25th seat.
The seed?
Uh-huh.
You need more detail about it?
Do we get like hotel or the
Okay,
schedule?
we'll have that send something out.
Yeah.
And Michael?
I just have a quick question for Peter. So, do we have a number for the homeless students in our school district?
I'll let Dawn answer that.
So I was actually just looking at that data today, and between homeless and foster care, over the course of this year, we have had approximately, I'm trying to think of the list, I'd say 18 to 20 students who fall into that we know of.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.